Thank you for joining me for a coffee break this morning.
Morning, Amy. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, for sure, for sure. It's such a pleasure to see you. We first met at COP21 when you were working for the state of California. You were first at Cali, PA, and then assigned to the governor's office, Governor Jerry Brown, to work on California, China, environmental and climate initiatives. And now you are the director of the California-China Climate Institute, which was launched in September of 2019 and housed at UC Berkeley. So can you tell me a little bit about the Institute and what its purpose is?
Sure. A pleasure to be here, Amy. And thanks for reminding me that good 5 years working for the state. Yes, the Institute, the California-China Climate Institute was formed from actually the meeting between then the governor of California, Jerry Brown, and Chinese President Xi back in 2017 in Beijing, recognizing the importance of subnational collaboration in addressing climate change as a global issue. And the Institute was established last September, so we're quite young. It is led by former Governor Jerry Brown, and it is set to spur climate actions through joint research, training, and dialogue between California and China, aiming to inform the national and subnational policymakers, foster cooperation, and of course, promote climate actions at all levels. I would say since last year, the Institute launched, we have successfully already set up a subnational climate change dialogue program, in which facilitates the policy exchange around kind of mid-century decarbonization pathway and accelerates subnational and local climate actions, especially now in the context of changing US-China relations and increasing global challenges. Specifically, the dialogue aims to lifting the climate issues in political agendas, linking policy and lawmaking with effective implementations, as well as balancing climate and other priorities. We do have 2 other programs, the Climate Leadership Training Program, which to be launched later this year, and the Climate Research Program that we are working closely with the faculty members, students, and affiliate researchers here at Berkeley. And the Institute already set its research agenda around priorities, including carbon pricing, long-term climate goal setting, zero-emission vehicles, climate adaptation, as well as sustainable land use and agriculture.
That's wonderful to hear, and it's amazing. You're a relatively young institute, and you are trying to launch and engage on climate action and programs during this very challenging time of the COVID pandemic. And your counterparts in China, that country has been hit very hard with the COVID emergencies too. So so it sounds like you're still able to move ahead on some initiatives. Can you be more specific in how you're dealing with those challenges, and possibly talk about other initiatives or activities that you are having to postpone or pivot on?
Yeah, sure. Great question. We were actually just in the middle of planning for a conference this April, right before the pandemic outbreak. So, and due to the challenges, first, our Chinese participants they had difficulties in getting their visas and coming to the US because the pandemic outbreak first happened in China, and then things happened in the US. So we had to really move the April conference to a later time. And I think we are all doing our best to, be able to adapt to this new normal, which is, I think right now is the 3rd month of working from home for us. And for the Institute's work, as I said, we're adapting. We have been discussing and actually moving some of those things online. For instance, last month, we convened a dialogue between some top officials and thought leaders from the US side and Chinese side. The dialogue was themed US-China collaboration addressing global challenges, where those top officials and thought leaders came together and they discussed the shared vulnerabilities and opportunities for cooperation, which both touched on COVID-19 and climate change. So that was one, kind of example we are adapting to this new environment. On the training side, we were hoping to launch a training program this summer, which was supposed to be an in-person training opportunity. But now, because of the situation, we are planning to move that to a virtual session. And we're working with the executive education branch here at Berkeley and try to set up the first training program online.
I did want to also ask you about the relationship between U.S. and China right now, and that arc of that U.S.-China relationship is so important in terms of adequately addressing both the COVID crisis and the climate challenge. And what are you seeing in terms of movement on climate action between the U.S. and China at this time, and where are the opportunities?
The COVID-19 pandemic was definitely a human tragedy, which is very unfortunate. But I think the crisis also demonstrates the importance of listening to scientists when they voice us, early warnings. And it also, I think, shows us the importance of early actions the government can and should take to protect their populations. I understand at the beginning of this crisis, there were some pointing fingers at each other, blaming, the government whether or not doing things appropriately enough. But I think U.S., China, regardless of, which country or, which jurisdiction, I think both pandemic and climate change are sort of the global threats that we're facing together. And I think most importantly for the COVID-19, it really exposed the vulnerabilities in our economy and society, which is also shared vulnerability. And it also provides a very good reminder to us of the importance of engagement and working relationships for solving problems together. And that's what the Institute is focused at advancing. On the US-China climate post-COVID dynamics, I think both countries are really at a pivotal moment right now, because in the next few decades, both countries in the span of a generation will be making policies and taking actions to achieve deep reductions in greenhouse gas emissions and significantly to reduce the risk of global climate change, especially making their infrastructure and economies more resilient to the effects of climate change. I think for California, for instance, the unprecedented wildfires have already, putting requirements on significant changes to the state's electricity system, insurance, and real estate sectors. China, too, is in the process of making its 14th five-year plan and its mid-century decarbonization strategies. And I think in the near term, we've been talking about stimulus spending and policies to help recover the economy. This really, I think, presents a good opportunity for both countries to be able to preserve and accelerate some momentum in the transition to a non-fossil fuel energy and economy. This current recession is a little bit different than the previous recession in 2008. So I think in addition that in both US and China, the energy industry have already evolved and grown so much. So I think the stimulus package or spending will need to be very strategically targeted to be effective. I do see unique opportunities COVID-19 and the stimulus policies present for both US and China to coordinate on longer term policy and technology. I think infrastructure investment is a good example, so that they can work by working together or separately, with aligned policy to set a direction for industry and leverage the benefits of, the scale of investment that we'll be making. So I think there's definitely still opportunity for both countries to work together, and there is the common interest. But I also will remind every one of us that we're in this very challenging times, that the bilateral relations, it's still evolving. So I think both the opportunities and challenges are there.
Right, the opportunity and the reality. I really appreciate your perspective on that, on what's going on right now between the US and China. And on that note, I also wanted to just hear your perspective on what keeps you hopeful during these challenging times.
I think the hopeful side, and also where I come from, and I devote a lot of my energy on this topic, is the subnational and states' role in accelerating those climate actions. I think regardless of a change in administration in 2020 here, I think the states will still be likely to play a very important role in engagement of policy and coordination amongst the states and across the Pacific with China on this important topic. I do see hope in there. And I think luckily in California, there's been this historical and long-standing partnership with China on those issues. And the engagement was rooted in a shared understanding that climate change is a global problem, and the cooperation is very essential to crafting those solutions. So I think under that assumption and the reality, I'm still very hopeful that progresses could be made, and things will still be happening on this subnational across Pacific collaboration on climate. That's my hope.
Is my hope too. And I think there is value in the fact that if those relationships, that bilateral coordination is part of that state's or subnationals DNA, they're not going to pivot on it during this period. It will be ongoing because that's what they have put in motion. And I'm very, very glad that you're part of that activity and working at the subnational level and helping out to move things forward.
Yeah, we're doing our best to also assist State of California's engagement with China on this important topic.
Great. Well, thank you for your continued leadership. It was wonderful to catch up with you this morning, and I look forward to seeing you in person someday again.
Likewise, pleasure talking to you, Amy.
Too. Thanks, Anne. Have a good rest of the day. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.